You just shouldn't do it. You really shouldn't be trying to predict blowouts because that's what other people are trying to do too. Other people see that 18-point spread of the Bucks over like the Warriors without Steph Curry and Draymond Green, right? Like I think that there was probably a spread last year with the Warriors where they had all these scrubs and it was like a 15 or a 16-point game, right? And most people will look at that and say, "Oh, well, I can't play the stud from the team that's supposed to blow this other team out. Like he's not going to play his fourth quarter rotation, and there's other guys that are going to play their full minutes, and all these different things." And it kind of goes back towards something that we talk about in theory of DFS, where you're not trying to predict the future, you're trying to beat other people. And if other people are saying that this team is going to blow the other team out, there's value in saying, well, what if it stays close? What if Giannis is in this spot where you only project him for 31 minutes and you say, oh, well, this is maybe going to be a blowout. What happens if that game stays close? Well, he's probably going to put up 75 fantasy points. What happens if this game stays close? Okay, well, that means that the other team, who is probably well underpriced because they're supposed to get blown out, it probably means that they're going to pay off very handsomely if this game stays close and goes the entire way, because it means that they're having a good shooting night and they're going to probably, at least a couple people are probably going to pay off their prices. So you can look at those situations and there's value in understanding that it's really, really hard to project blowouts, that it's really, really hard to predict blowouts, and try to take advantage of the rest of the field fading that spot because they think that a starter isn't going to get their full allotment of minutes. It's just one of those things where in DFS, a lot of what you need to be doing is trying to think about what other people are assuming is going to happen and try to understand what makes you more money, following the field or doing the thing they think is not going to happen.
Right. I mean, it's much easier. In DFS, it's actually easier to project what my opponents are doing than it is to project the outcomes of the games. So if people, this is how I've won GPPs. By playing the game that when the old school Warriors, with Durant and Curry and Clay, they come in and it's the blah, blah, blah. And they're playing the Grizzlies with like everyone out. And it's like they're an 18-point favorite. And I go like, well, Curry's going to be 4% owned or Durant's going to be 4% owned because no one believes in this game. It's a 9-game slate. So there's plenty of options. And then you look at the Grizzlies or whatever on the other side. And like no one is priced more than 5,300. And you go, well, what happens if what happens if the Grizzlies win this game? What's the probability of that happening? It's not, do I think it's going to happen? But even if you just go by the money line in that type of game, the money line would say that in that type of game, that garbage team has a 12% shot at winning. Like even just based on the money line, people either look at the money line and be minus 700. It's like, well, that still means that like 12% of the time the other team wins. So if 12% of the time the other team wins and this game goes over, like how owned are these guys? 2%, right? The Curry and Durant are 4%, and these guys are 2%. And like, well, 12% of the time, according to the actual betting market, this game will stay close and the Grizzlies will win, or whatever team will win. Now, once you raise the ownership, then it becomes more efficient. So instead of predicting an outcome, try to at least put a probability and go, well, this team's going to blow this other team out. It's like, well, what's the probability? It's not 100%, 90%. Okay, so there may be value on the other side. There may be value even in blowouts. This is what I don't understand also, James. Even in blowouts, if anything, rostering the blowout side, this blows my mind, James. I know you probably hear this in your community. This game's going to blow out. Who's going to get the blowout run? Instead of thinking in terms of, like, if the Bucks are going to blow out another team, how did they blow out the other team? By Chris Middleton putting up 45 points, by Drew Holiday putting up 50 points, by Giannis putting up 70 points. Like, it's more likely that why don't you just concern yourself on, instead of like, oh, is Bobby Portis going to get the last 6 minutes? It's like or who's going to get even worse, who's going to get the blowout run on the losing side? And it's like, well, that's even more worthless. Like, I just think in terms of if I'm going to roster anyone from a game that I think is going to blow out. Rostering the favored side's main players has more value. The losing side's main players have the limited value, but people tend to think in reverse and go, well, it's going to be a blowout. Can't roster the studs of the team that's going to score the most points, but I want to know who's going to get the blowout run and then try to hit 3 times in a row. By 1, it has to blow out. 2, they have to get the extra minutes. And then 3, they have to put up an outlier result in those extra minutes. And people, you don't realize, James, sometimes people spend so much time on, well, I'm going to roster Luke Kennard because maybe he'll get the blowout run. And when they got like, dude, why do you have to think so much? Why don't you just roster Paul George? Like, why don't you just roster the guy that's going to put up 50 in if they do blow him out?